the first teacher presentation we've had, I think it would be good to maybe start off with a Q&A for you because you have given us quite a nice discussion. And then after that, we asked that we just abide by the original discussion rules, which is if you can't get your question out in 20 and 30 seconds, we'll ask you to restate it. And that goes for everybody. You can monitor somebody else and say, hey, you're being wordy, please cap it off and get to the point. And other than that, everything else is fair game. So does anybody have questions for Professor D? Dr. D?
Last one.
Yes, sure. Nasir, right?
Yes. Isn't it also self-contradictory to be like morally relative? Because if you're saying morality is relative, but your own position is relative as well, wouldn't it be true? Right?
Yeah, so if I understand you right, Nasir, you're asking, is it self-contradictory to be a moral relativist? You know, I know some people argue that it's always self-contradictory to be a moral relativist. My own opinion is that it's not always self-contradictory to be a moral relativist because you might take the position that there really aren't any things that are objectively right or wrong, and you're willing to accept the consequences of that. You're willing to accept that it's neither right nor wrong for me to try to, how should I put this? No. You might think that it's, well, let me just take the version of relativism that focuses on a culture. Okay? You might think that if my culture says it's right, then it's right. Kind of like the bumper sticker that people sometimes have that says, you know, my country, right or wrong. Actually, that's kind of a loaded bumper sticker. But let's say you had a bumper sticker that said, my culture makes it right. Okay? I don't know how much you'd sell trying to peddle that bumper sticker. But I don't see that there's anything self-contradictory about that. What becomes contradictory, I believe, is when a person kind of gives with one hand and takes away with the other. In other words, they say with the first hand, what makes something right is the fact that a person's culture says it's right. And then, in the next breath, they want to say, you see that culture over there that is treating people so badly in this way and that way? What they're doing is not right. Okay? I believe that that may be the source of some of the contradiction. That people sometimes make a universal statement like, you know, for any action, that action is right if fill in the blank. Your culture says it's right. And then, the next moment, they want to take some of that ground back and say, that particular action, you know, child prostitution, let's say, that's wrong, even though that culture approves of it or says it's right.
But then it's not relative anymore.
You mean that second statement?
Right.
Oh, I think that that's correct. I think that as soon as you say that that culture's action is really wrong, in other words, when I say really, I don't mean like really with a capital R, like, oh, that makes me really, really mad. I just mean something like genuinely wrong. Now, let me back up a step and say, look, a person could say, look, I think that all kinds of things, all actions are right if your culture says that they're right. And then they could say, that action over there, that example of child prostitution in that culture that approves of it, that's really wrong. But you could mean by that, you know, it's wrong according to my culture's rules. Right? You could be like, as an American, I'm not going to put up with that. Or as someone from, you know, a Western liberal democracy, I'm not going to put up with that. examples of morally exemplary people like Gandhi or Mother Teresa and countless others, both sacred and secular throughout history, have done morally good things, or they have morally recognizable virtues. They're paradigm instances. When you think of Nelson Mandela, okay, even if you don't think he's a morally perfect person, you probably would like to say, wow, that guy has got a lot of morally praiseworthy traits. And if you're convinced that that's true, and you're not convinced that it's simply a function of his own individual beliefs or his own culture, that's the kind of, I'm not sure if that gets it true. Common question. Do I call it folks, or do you want to guys? Okay. This gentleman over here, you said your name earlier. Is it
Graceland?
Graceland?
Yeah, G-R-A-Y-S-O-N.
G-R-A-Y.
S-O-N.
S-O-N?
Yeah.
Grayson. You know what? I'm such a guy from the South. I thought you said Grayson.
No.
Like Elvis Presley?
No.
Oh, okay.
I've been there, but so it seems to me like morality would have to be relative in a sense, because if we're talking about individual morality and not having it be relative to a specific thing, our individualness is created from things that are relative to us, like experiences and cultural, different cultures, not just race and ethnicity, but like nerds, jocks, and valley girls, just so to speak, and blah, blah, blah. And so it seems like we can only accept things that are relative to us to help create our moralities that we stand to. Does that seem kind of accurate to you?
Yeah, if I understand your point, I think that it makes a crucial and often dead-on correct observation about individual differences, which often get amplified with cultural differences. We are not simply carbon copied, sort of mass-produced
Like blank sheets.
individual, right? Or
Yeah.
even if you see the novel Brave New World, one of the interesting things about that is people are being produced kind of like a factory produces automobiles, and you have thousands and thousands of people who have like the very same kind of personality, like down to the things that they like and dislike. Now, you might imagine this going very well with a bunch of Gandhis, or very poorly with a bunch of Hitlers, but in this society, right, they do it for different kinds of social classes. But that's not really reflective of the way our world works, forms people's character.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of difference there. Now, I kind of try to distinguish the sort of relativism I was focusing on from what I think is the kind of relativism you're focusing on, which is, what I see as your target is the claim that there are lots of differences in what people morally think due to the fact that they have different histories.
Yeah.
And I think that for the sake of discussion, we could admit that to be true.
Okay.
So that there's 7 billion different moral psychologies.
Yeah.
Reflecting the 7 different people on the planet. Now, it's still a separate step to then try to argue, well, what's really morally right is what, this individual, this 1 out of 7 billion, or this group of individuals, maybe 1 billion out of 7 billion.
So it's more relative to like a specific thing in a situation. I guess, well, I'll have to think about more of that. But,
Okay.
yeah.
I should probably point out one more thing, and that is a number of people have tried to also push back against the super splinter diversity that I just talked about. They would say, look, it's not quite true to say that there's 7 billion different moral psychologies. They try to say, when you look at people, they often do agree on a lot of things. And even cultures, ways of grouping those people into different sets, even cultures often have a lot of overlap in the sorts of things that they say are morally wrong. One of the books that I use in my ethics class is called The Abolition of Man, and it has in its appendix sort of a very quick and dirty attempt to show how many ancient cultures, whether they're Egyptian or Confucian or like ancient Greek or Hebrew or fill in the blank, oftentimes say the same kinds of things in some of their moral codes about trying to treat other people with honesty, or trying to treat your ancestors or your immediate elders with obedience, or at least respect or consideration or honor or something. So it's an open question about just how much of an overlap you can get through that kind of investigation. But I'm optimistic that we might be able to find some things that fall in that key.
I was wondering if it might be beneficial right now to maybe go around the room and see what everyone's thinking about moral relativism right now. Like, we didn't ask at the beginning, maybe we should have. Was anyone a moral relativist or leaning towards moral relativism before? So maybe we should do that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
We could either do it around the room, or we could just take volunteers. I don't want to sort of out anybody if they're still on the fence. Well, let me just start off by saying, in my classes, I often take a vote by asking people to indicate whether they, yes, are a moral relativist, no, or not a moral relativist, or, well, they're still on the fence. Okay, so let's assume that I'm still on the fence here. I may surprise you, so I'll let other people speak there.
All right.
You want to start?
I definitely am not a moral relativist. I believe that there are objective moral truths. What I do think about it is it is something that can be used to stop people from being rude to each other or hurting each other. And so my real question is, how do you, if you believe in objective moral truths, how do you, do so while still respecting other people and, allowing them to, be who they are? So that's my big issue with it in just day-to-day life. So.
I would not classify myself as a moral relativist. I take a kind of weird, naturalized realism position on morality.
I'm a conventionalist about morality. I believe there are some objective moral truths, maybe many, that we could allow for. I dislike moral relativism simply because, just as Berkeley and subjective idealism, the price you pay and the implication when followed to extremes seems too high a price to pay. Am I sympathetic to the concerns of the moral relativists? Very much so, because in our appendix we have to cite them to come by any objective moral reference. But other than that, I have a large curiosity on how to make that project cohere.
No.
Very concise.
Same here. For instance, I believe there are objective truths.
I'm trying to eke out a way of making some kind of compatibilistic view coherent, and in order to do that, it might be kind of trivial, but I think that perhaps there are concrete moral principles that don't vary by culture, such as murdering somebody for no apparent reason is wrong. That most, not all cultures would subscribe that that's wrong, and maybe that is some kind of evidence that it is wrong. However, I do think that maybe more trivial points of an individual culture's morality or ethics, such as traffic laws, for instance, are relativistic. So I don't know if I can defend that all the way down. I'm working on it.
guess I like it. Not too sure, because I can't really think of any objective moral truths that are out there, because I just can't at the moment, but I mean, I could be wrong. I'd have to think more on that.
You came in late, Jesse Charles.
Yeah, I came in late. Yeah, moral relativist, for sure.
Can you tell us why?
Cause.
Fair enough.
I'd say I'm I don't know, I feel like some people use their culture as an excuse for something that they always kind of find. Like, I don't know, I guess someone comes from a life of poverty, and it's their culture in the poor side of the town. They would use that as an excuse to be in a life of crime, in a way. That's how I feel like you have a choice of getting out of that rut and not being part of the stereotype of some of the things.
I'm on the fence, but right now I'm gonna go for moral relativity. I think things can be taken into account for each situation, such as, you know, past histories of cultures, even like chemical makeups in our brain and whatnot for our moods and our emotions, and because those, I think, pose a very serious realistic level in what we deem as right and wrong. And something like that, in my opinion, cannot be left up to an individual to gauge what is morally, you know, true, false, or correct, or anything. So that's what I'm going with right now.
For me, coming in, I really didn't have any knowledge of moral relativism, but after like the lecture and everything, I would say that I am not for it.
I would say I am definitely not a moral relativist, and I think because for me personally there are definite objective moral truths and values, and I think that personally, in my personal beliefs and religious beliefs, I have religious beliefs, and I believe those are universal. And then someone could, you know, rebuttal and say, well, that is relative to your beliefs in religion. But I don't think that necessarily works because my views are universal. It's just not, I wouldn't just say that, you know, because I am a Christian that I think that, say, you know, anybody else is, I have my own personal views that are universal. There are objective moral values from my views on life. But I do think, and I will think that there are definitely some things that happen to be relative to culture, but I don't think that relativism is true.
I am not a moral relativist. Individual moral relativism seems almost too good to be true, kind of like you want to go with it because you can pick what feels good to you, what you want. But I do believe that there are basic right and wrongs that are true for everybody.
Yeah. Before you do me, you've been here before, right?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Veronica?
Yes.
Yes. Do you have thoughts about moral relativism? Are you familiar with it at all?
I'm sorry, if you have thoughts on what?
Moral relativism.
Yes. I mean, I don't know if I really have